Namaste. Hi, I'm Bruce Benefiel, and welcome to One World. Namaste is a Sanskrit word, and it simply means God in me recognizes God in you. And think about that when you're walking down the street and passing people. There's that essence of God within each one of us that we can all share in building this one world. This show's guest, first of all, is Aimee Beth Ward, and she has Earth's Living Art Tours, and she does a collection of video installations throughout the year with her artwork, and is currently putting on a combination of visual and theatrical presentation called Picnic for the New World Order. Aimee Beth, excuse me. I'm glad to have you on the show.
Thank you, Bruce.
Great. Our other guest is a gentleman by the name of David Chez, who's the director of the Emerging Talent Network located here in Phoenix. And David,
thank you,
glad to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to an interesting show with both of you.
You'll have it.
Great. Aimee Beth, first of all, what prompted you to do what you're doing in the visual and the video realm? I mean, when I first met you when you were doing the Picnic for the New World Order, I found that very interesting.
Well, I'm doing a work that is a mixture between a visual art and performance art.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the process for 10 years now. This is the 10th year. It's a documentation, or the name of it is Self-Portrait of an Artist's Conceptual Life Form.
What prompted you to do it, though? I mean,
What prompted me was I started out in art very early in my life, and as an artist, you finally get into the center of that to try to figure out, well, what is art and what is an artist? Mm-hmm. What drives us and what makes us be, and what is art?
Right.
And I came from a background that said that art was the idea, it was a process that was important. That's called conceptual art. Well, from that I got the idea that it isn't really the process so much as the person that's doing the process, because without the person there'd be no process.
Right. It's kind of like a teach-learn process.
Exactly. I mean, how can you have the chicken with the egg? You can't have, the egg without the chicken, or whatever. But anyway, it comes out from the person, and it's that total person. It's their background. Even when they were a child, it comes out in their art, and that's part of the process as well. And what happens in our daily lives, is part of the process. Last year the year started out with a lot of controversy in the news about censorship in the arts, and using the flag as a symbol, and so...
Hence the Picnic for the New World Order.
Hence the Picnic for the New World Order. It started out during the year. My last piece was finished, and this was the new one, and I just felt the need to express myself in some form, and using the flag as a means of expressing, because a symbol that doesn't have any meaning behind it really isn't used by artists. It's only those symbols that have some energy that
and we're
is a
using
tool.
all different types of symbols now.
And I put a lot of them together in that piece.
Yes,
put
you
a lot
did.
of
Yes, you did.
a lot of symbols, but then the year was really mixed with a lot of symbols, with the war and with the arts and the censorship and all of that. So this whole year has been reflected in me in my own self-portrait in some ways, and that comes out in the picnic.
David, what prompted you to do what you're doing with the Emerging Talent Network? It's something where you are actually seeking new model or talent and things like that.
Well, that answer goes way back, actually. I've been motivated for a long time, but didn't know exactly how to express it because I've been in the people business for years. I used to do chiropractic and sports medicine. I've always been around people, do public lectures. And during that time, and even my personal experience, it seems like one person has always been taking advantage of another person. I've seen that. It's so prevalent. Matter of fact, there's even a book that I'll be putting out soon of my life called Gullible's Travels. But back in '87, it was really the closest motivation of that prompted what I'm doing now. I used to be a production assistant for a media company here. And then a few years later, I was, for a short period of time, a manager of a talent agency. And I just saw a lot of abuses and misdirections and one person taking advantage of someone else who didn't have as much knowledge or information as they did, and they somehow worked upon that. So I said that I wanted to create something that would help people get ahead in their lives and come from a position of strength rather than weakness.
Yeah. Naivety has its advantages in some cases, and in others it's kind of a disadvantage.
Right, right. And in this case, it's a disadvantage.
Yeah. Aimee Beth, with your art, how did you get where you're at and relationship to the people around you, and how do you see that in the common human experience? How do you see that reflected?
Well, I chose Scottsdale, where I'm at right now, and where the piece actually began is in Scottsdale, in Arizona, because I feel like I'm a much more Western kind of relaxed atmosphere and not so much East Coast, although I had some of my background is from the East Coast, as well as the Midwest. But for the people around me here, I think I reflect the Southwest, the more earthy elements and the people who are interested in protecting the earth, caring for the earth, and perhaps feeling this part of the spirituality coming up from the earth. So that in itself, when I start thinking of myself as an artist, I am from the earth. You know, I am that product. And so people around me are more or less those kinds of people, and I work with, well, actually I work with everyone, but...
Yeah. Now, do you find that you seek them out, or they seek you out, or you just kind of come together without much effort?
I guess there's a symbiotic relationship going on between me and others. I have a group of friends who are more in the theatrics and the music and the arts and the performances and in the visual as well. And we need the audience, and so then we have to go and find the audience, or the audience has to come to us. And through experiences, and I put myself out in the middle of a park, which I've done. I've used Scottsdale Center of the Arts. In fact, I found Scottsdale for that because I fell in love with that park. And that is a wonderful place to do street performances and street work. And of course, using the video, I'm actually documenting people as they come by. A lot of times I don't know them. You know, I get to be very intimate with their visual image because I see it over and over, all the tapes that I use and I put in, and then when my piece is done, they are part of my piece. And so even though they may not know that they became part of the artwork, they may be shown in New Mexico, where one piece was shown for 4 months, or in California, or in Kansas. There's a piece going on in Kansas right now, and they may not even know that they're part of the work. Just happened by, like you did.
Right, exactly. David, how do you see what you're doing reflected in the common human experience around you and the immediate group of people that you associate with?
How do I see it fitting in? Exactly?
Yeah, how do you see that fitting in, and how do you see it being reflected back to you in those environments, or that particular environment?
I'm not sure exactly how you mean that.
Well, you have a group of people that you associate with, friends, co-workers, peers. How do you see what you're doing reflected in where they're at or what they're doing, or do you see similar intentions in what they're doing along with what you're doing?
To get where we want to go
Right.
in our daily activity? Well, yes, because I see a lot of people striving for what they want and they don't know how to go about doing it. And that's why I've created this position for myself, because it's so hard to find something that meets a job description that meets who you are.
Oftentimes when we see something that needs to be done, it's up to us to do it.
Exactly.
Is that what you're finding?
Exactly. And I found out that if I'm aware of something, if I'm conscious of something, then I'm responsible to react to it. Mm-hmm. And so I've taken on the position now where I can use all the talents I have of perception and intuition to find people, whether they're aware of where they want to go or not at the moment, and try to bring it to their attention and see if that does actually fit into something that they've been working for, whether it be intentional or unintentional.
Okay. Speaking of being aware of where they want to go, how do you see that the people that you deal with, are they aware of what's going on inside them and how to express that, or do you find that they're still somewhat closed?
I found a lot of people are really anxious to get out and anxious to find out who they are and how to get in touch with it. But and you know very well about this, that there's really no real advanced levels of interactive training and study that people can really have. There's a lot of books around, but they're mostly for beginners, and there's very few people around, or books or literature around, that help someone who's experienced a certain amount and they don't know what to do next.
Right. Aimee Beth, when you're thinking about the future and what you're doing with your art, how do you see that fitting into a common multicultural experience? Now, granted, we have a small one here in Phoenix and Scottsdale, or the Valley area. What I see you doing is actually working towards a larger aspect of human development, if I may. How do you see that fitting into a common multicultural experience?
Well, I think that art has to bridge the multicultures, and visual artists have that opportunity. The only thing that I use in my pieces usually is a few words. Most of them are very visual orientated. Mm-hmm. So that crosses the barrier of language, which we have.
I know when I first met you, there were no words.
There was no word.
Censor.
I had one word which was censored,
right.
and that was English. Unfortunately, some children that came by that didn't understand English, we had some foreign people there that day,
right.
Didn't quite get the word. So, and even in that, they got the idea that something was across and couldn't speak. Mm-hmm. So the word wasn't as important as the tape. You know, that was the real
right.
message.
That was the symbol.
Right, and I do try not only to work with symbols that are international, because the whole earth, and I work with what is happening on the whole earth, mm-hmm. But also with handicap, you know, and I like to try to not use verbal. I have a couple of my pieces that are all musical, so that it could be used for the hearing impaired. I've always wanted to include hearing impaired sign in some of my videos, so that when you see them, they're not completely audio orientated as well. But of course, then you get down to the visual impaired, and then there is that problem with the visual impaired.
Now, do you use that to leave open those areas of exploration for a person to experience their own ideas of reality, if you will, within those works?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are some pieces that, in fact, the one I'm working on now, or my newest piece, will have an interaction where the artist or the person that is experiencing the art has to actually go inside and step on a piece of equipment that would include them in the work, and they would see themselves as part of the work right then.
Audience participation.
Right, more audience. Yeah. I want to get into that audience so that they can feel that the artwork somehow is personally, has to do with them personally. Because we aren't ourselves all by ourselves. We are ourselves united.
Right.
You know, and that's the self is the individual inside, but it's also the inside connected to all others. And we have to really start thinking of ourselves as the human community. and not the human
It's
individual.
like when I open up the show with Namaste. That's an example of everything. You know, we all have that point of light, or whatever you want to call it, inside of us that is part of the other. And we're not disconnected. We're all basically one. We're individualized. We have our own particular ways of living and things like that, but we're all part of the whole. David, with what you're doing, how do you see that in relationship to building a larger community and to bridging the gaps to a multicultural community that works in harmony?
Well, what I like about what I'm doing in relation to that is that I'm able to take people from all areas and bring them together and prepare them for the entertainment industry. And the entertainment industry is the big communication center and network for the masses. So we're able to...
That's been a ruthless area.
Yes, it is.
Do you see it changing?
No, because there always will be ruthless people, and there will always be ruthless conditions. All we can do on a one-to-one basis is to give people not only the right information, but to get them in touch with themselves so those conditions will have less and less effect upon them.
Be able to rise above it, so to speak.
Exactly, right.
Okay. What kind of additional barriers do you see to a multicultural community?
What kind of barriers do I see that comes up from getting away from the barriers? Is that what you mean?
No, what in addition to the preparation do you see as other potential barriers, or do you see them?
Well, I myself don't carry a lot of barriers within me, but there's natural barriers, because if I find someone who really needs to communicate with the world, then sometimes the way they look or some characteristic or feature that they have may be a block to the mass mind's concept of who they want telling them what information or entertaining them. And so there are natural blocks within the people that we're trying to reach, and so that's a problem. We as a group generally don't live in those barriers, but the people who view us collectively, so to speak, do have most of the concepts intact.
How do you see them being overcome?
By people coming into who they are more and more will naturally overcome. It's just like you see certain types of people. Let's say Albert Einstein. What an unusual looking man, but it doesn't matter if he's wild looking. Look at what he's done. So people judge people more on their works than just how they look. So I think if someone is really good at communicating or entertainmentally strong, so to speak, then I think that overcomes the barriers and that overcomes the prejudices that people were raised with. I'd like to see that end, that's for sure.
Don't look at what I look like or listen to what I say, look at what I do.
Exactly. Actions speak a lot louder.
Aimee Beth, what kind of barriers in your work do you see to the larger community? Or what is it permitted you to see in the community that's keeping us from becoming that united community?
Well, this piece particularly, it was a great learning experience for me, because I always before was able to talk about my work. And this time, because my mouth was taped shut, I wasn't able to explain what I was doing. And what I found was that people want immediately and very quick explanations. I want to understand right now. You know, give me the bottom line now, so I can...
McDonald's enlightenment. You know,
quick fix.
Right,
you know, they want quick fixes. And the media has really propagated that. You know, we used to have a little bit more patience than we do now. We have about 5-minute patience now. So with me not being able to talk to them, I found that the biggest barrier was that they'd come up, they would see that I couldn't tell them what it was, and so they would automatically turn off and walk away. Well, a few people would come up and they would puzzle it out, and they would look at me, and they would look at, and they would maybe even talk with each other, and I'd had some really neat dialogues of people working with somebody that they didn't know, Joe Blow off the street, because they were trying to think this through themselves. And it gave me an opportunity to say, look, you know, what people will do if you don't interfere and let them do the process, which was much more meaningful to them than if I had have told them. It would have been, you know, so what? But having them work through the process, they gained a lot more insight about the whole process and what the art was about than if I would have ever told them.
And do you see that in relationship, to a larger community? Do you see that being a necessary piece that allows people, to more or less let them learn to work with each other, work things out, without the types of threats and things or control issues and things like that that we're traditionally aware of, the security issues, the home, the food, and the clothing and all that. Do you see that even more enabling that gap to be bridged?
You mean art or, yeah?
The interactive process that you have prompted by the
Well, yeah, I think the interactive process is the key. Without working through it yourself, you don't learn. And by having somebody hand it to you, we find out that there's not really any meaning in that learning,
And we've had all kinds of books
We've gone through
things that have been handed to us, and it's, what do we do with it?
a lot of time and a lot of money being given and not used. Whereas if you allow the person time to work out their own, which is kind of harder because, you want them to get it right.
Yeah.
Everybody wants people to have the best that they can be the best that they can be, and yet we're so willing to stop them from doing it on their own, which is the only way they really get it.
Yeah.
We just don't give it to them. They have to give it to themselves. And without that
we'll
process...
give you the right, we'll let you have the free will to do this. Wait a minute, you got to do it this way.
You have to do it my way, and at my time,
Right.
within my time frame, because after all, we have all these little strings attached, and we need to kind of cut those strings back and let the person grow.
I'll put this out to the both of you, and please jump in with the thoughts that you have or would like to express. How do you see things being facilitated in that larger community around you, and in other ways that are enabling people to work together collectively for the benefit of each other and the people that they're associated with? Is that big enough for you?
Well, I think that,
It worked.
both of us are in the media, or all three of us are in the media, and I
Right.
think that's where it has to be. It's the one thing that will hook all of the cultures and all of the people in a very short time. We shrunk the earth down through media, and I think it'll end up being.
We've got almost instantaneous, telecommunications available now, where we can witness events seconds after it happens, or at least replayed on the news.
Yeah, right.
Or
Seems
Or
like
while
seconds.
it's happening.
Right.
Or while it's
unfortunately.
happening, right.
Yeah.
Now we're limited, I think, in scope as to what's being said as the commentary relating to that.
Right. The script is very
Yeah.
controlled.
Now there's a lot of talk about marginalization of news, and that we're told only what they want us to hear. Now, be that as it may, I think a lot of people have been not necessarily hoodwinked, but they've trusted their news commentaries and things like that. Do you see that changing, and do you see people questioning?
Well, there's a lot more questioning. There's a lot more light, things coming to light, and I think that because we do have this instantaneous response now, that it's going to be harder to hide and deceive. And even when something's communicated, it's your little inner voice that says, or that's not so. So it's really getting harder and harder to mislead and misdirect people because of that, because they more intuitively know what's right or not. Something's not right. It seems true, it looks true, feels true, something's not true about it, and I'm going to check it out. And people are really pursuing more than ever what they feel to be true and right. Do you agree with that?
What kind of advice can you give to a person who's maybe just becoming aware of that little voice inside of them?
Probably
to develop that, or to...
Probably the best thing to do that really helps you grow faster in relation to an inner voice and interacting is to trust it more than you're willing to trust it at this point. And someone who's hearing that, who is very young in it, it's practice. It's practice being yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many things in our environment that keeps us from expressing ourselves the way we really want to, that our feeling counts, that something will happen, they say, well, I knew that. Well, you should have believed in that gut feeling, the inner voice beforehand, and not say, I knew that after it happened. Right. So learn to trust it ahead of time. and act accordingly.
Aimee Beth, can you share something in that line?
I would think that trust is a real important one, David. Another one probably is to go ahead and make mistakes and allow yourself the room to make mistakes.
Yeah, allow yourself
and
the
learn
freedom
from
to
them.
make them,
Yeah.
because we don't learn unless we
Yeah.
make mistakes.
Right.
And a lot of my best work came from a mistake. You know, and so as I think you find that you can play with mistakes and make them into something that you couldn't have conceived of if it hadn't have been a mistake. And if you're so afraid of even making that first effort to make a mistake or make a fool out of yourself or something, then you just simply don't grow.
Better
You're
50 times.
handicapping yourself.
Better 50 times bold and be wrong than one time timid.
Yeah. Really, there you go.
But this always, you know, it seems to be able to empower people. I mean, look at Abraham Lincoln. According to history, failed at everything he did, and then was elected president and changed the course of this country.
Right. And I think he lost something like 57 elections or something like that, minor elections,
Yeah.
before he got there. No, that's a person who has been knocked down a lot, but he got up one more time over and above all the times he was knocked down.
Maybe is that another lesson there?
Yeah, really.
You know, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, pick yourself back up again, dust yourself off, and start putting more
Sure makes
foot-
me feel better being a late bloomer, you know? When you hear like Einstein flunked
Really?
math, and you hear a lot of incongruous things that go on in life,
Right.
you have to settle down and say it's okay after all. Whatever's happening in your life is okay.
Real quickly, how do you see this affecting our children? How can we help them to listen more in their younger age and to empower them?
My son is 21, and I am amazed that the kids, the young adults, the people today, the younger people, already have so much going for them because they've been a little bit more in tune and exposed in some ways. And so I think that the thing that helped the children is just to just to grin and say, yeah, they're going to do it to us too, just like we did to our parents, and just let them be. Let them learn their own ways, and create their own world. We tend to want to have them be in ours, and they're going to have their own.
Right. They're our leaders.
Yeah.
David, anything real quick on that?
Comments on the children, because I have two wonderful kids, is I found out, and I've realized with Sherry and I, my wife, that where we've talked, that if our philosophy is intact and we are living something that's right and truthful, then the children, there isn't going to be that generation gap. There's not going to be that problem, because they'll see that you can live certain ways, and we are open-minded enough to let them live their way and act out what they know to be true.
Great. Thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
I really enjoyed it. And thank you all for watching. One World, as you might guess, we do try and take a look at a lot of different views and a lot of different walks of life and how those comparisons can be brought together. And please, write us with your comments and your concerns. Give us the worst, the best, how we can improve in your eyes. Care of One World, P.O. Box 32035, Phoenix, Arizona, 85064. Again, I'm Bruce Benefiel, also known as Zendor. Namaste.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you. That was fun.